All right. Well, here we are.
Oh, I got a fucking cut on my finger last night.
You're just like my dog.
Yeah. But it's like right on the part of my finger that fucking touches everything, so it's hella annoying.
I had a canker sore earlier this week.
That's
Right
that.
on the inside of my lip.
Yeah, those are the ones on the inside of your lip, right? It's
Yeah.
just what is it? Is it like
It's an infection. It's a mild infection.
You're infected?
Yeah. I mean, it's like you bite your lip, the wound's open, you're putting fucking shit in there all day.
Yeah.
It just
I
gets
do eat a lot of shit.
gunk in there. The way I do it, so there's a couple ways you could do it. You could do Oragel, which is like a little fucking numbing cream. There's also Oragel mouthwash, which I need to get some, but I can never find it. Me personally, I just fucking put some ice on it to numb it, and then I take a toothbrush and I just brush the hell out of it, and it brushes all the gunk out. It hurts, but it's like 30 seconds of pain, and then it's like healed in like 12 hours.
Is it like a blister type shit? Like
Yeah.
you can pop it and all the stuff will come out?
No. It looks like an open wound. It looks like a staph infection, kind of.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, shit.
I don't have herpes. I promise.
You better not.
This is a disclaimer.
Disclaimer: no one on the podcast has herpes yet.
We'll see how the guest lists build up. Who knows? Oh god,
dude, I played in a Magic the Gathering tournament on Friday.
I don't know what that is.
You know Magic the Gathering, the card game?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, it's a trading card game. Been playing a lot of it. I got my ass fucking widened by people there. Yeah. I got gaped. Yeah, that's about all I did this weekend.
What did I do this weekend? I went to Chili's on Friday night.
Chili's? Did you get the
triple dipper?
Yeah.
No, every single person that I've told that I went to Chili's has asked me that. I did not. I can barely eat at Chili's. Like there is like one thing on the menu that I could eat. And the frustrating thing is I used to get the veggie fajitas because they had veggie fajitas, and it literally was just like, because the fajitas come with like the onion and bell peppers and shit, right?
Yeah.
But the veggie part was, instead of giving you meat, they gave you a veggie patty just like chopped up.
Okay.
Took it off the menu. But guess what? I can still order hamburger with a veggie patty.
Oh,
so they have the ingredients. They're just not making it into the fajita.
They can't make that shit sizzle anymore,
I guess. So it's like the one thing that I could eat there. So now I have to eat like a hamburger with a veggie patty, and they put mustard on their hamburgers.
Yeah, I found out that's what. Wait, like as a condiment or?
Yeah.
Oh,
so
okay.
it's the bottom bun, mustard, like 6 or 7 pickles. If you're a pickle lover, why? But like, I respect it, I guess. I don't know. It's like a whatever snack that some people like. It's like the cilantro gene. But 6 or 7 slices of pickle, that's a little much. Like, I'm not fucking Bubble Bass.
When I was a kid, we would get jars of pickles and then like cut them up for pickle slices for whatever. But sometimes I would just take an entire pickle and then put it in a Ziploc bag and then let it sit in my backpack all day until lunch, and then I ate it.
Ooh. It's like those fucking bagged pickles that you see at the gas
like
station.
Gas stations, like the hot pickles and shit. Yeah.
I think my aversion to pickles is the cucumber, because I don't like cucumbers. But I liked pickled onions. I liked pickled jalapenos. Like, I like anything that, like, I like there's this, I forget what it's called, but there's this Mexican restaurant down the street.
Taco Bell.
No. It's called La Favorita, and they have like a little like salsa bar, and in the salsa bar they have like this thing that you can like put in like a tray, and you're supposed to eat it with whatever, and it's carrots, potatoes, and jalapenos, but they're all pickled.
Okay.
I forget what the name of it's called. I googled it, but it's really, really good, and I eat them all. They're all pickled. It's the same pickling concoction that you make for cucumbers with normal pickles, but I don't like normal pickles. So I think it's just the cucumbers. I have a huge aversion to phallic vegetables, I think.
You don't like bananas?
Banana's not a vegetable.
Oh, fuck. All right.
I do I do like bananas. Maybe if I'm like really, really in the mood for a banana, I'll eat like a raw banana, or I'll eat banana bread. Banana and anything else, get it away from me. Don't fucking put it in my smoothie. I hate a banana smoothie.
I feel like I'm not very well versed in bananas because you said raw banana, and I started thinking, do people cook their bananas?
Yeah, they fry them. Well, they fry plantains, but bananas and plantains are pretty similar. You could also do, oh god, I forget what it's called. It's this dish, bananas Foster's. It's literally like you take like sugar and you put it in a pan and you like start sautéing it to basically make a caramel, and then you put like you take a banana and you slice it in half down the length so you can lay flat, and then you put them in there and you like baste it over, and it kind of makes them like candied bananas essentially. You serve it with ice cream.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's okay. I just don't. Whenever you eat banana, that's all you taste.
Yeah,
so
it's a very strong taste.
I used to make, like, when I was really like in my smoothie game, because now I just make a mixed berry smoothie, but like when I was really in my smoothie game, I would kind of switch it up every day, and I always dreaded getting to the banana day because I would do banana, peanut butter, cocoa powder, kale, yogurt, the regular stuff, and it's like no matter how much chocolate or cocoa powder, no matter how much peanut butter, no matter how much kale, no matter how much yogurt, no matter how much whatever I put in there, banana just tasted like straight banana.
Yeah,
I might as well have just eaten a banana dipped in protein powder. Like there was no like there was nothing. So no, I don't like bananas.
All right. Well, do you like bananas? Do you like banana shaped vegetables?
Phallic.
Maybe
banana's not a fucking vegetable. It's a fruit. Do you know banana's a melon?
It's a melon?
It's in the melon family.
I don't give a fuck, okay? Like, people are like, strawberries aren't berries or whatever the fuck. Fuck you. It's strawberry. Like, welcome to the Learning Curve podcast.
Are you going to introduce yourself?
You always go first.
Oh, okay.
I feel like we need to...
I'm in shorts that are progressively getting shorter every week, and my name is Cameron.
Yep. I am Bodhi, a.k.a. Shrinky Dink, a.k.a. Big Body Benz.
Big Body Benz.
Big Body Benz.
I feel like that's like a nickname possibly for Queen Elizabeth.
It's a nickname that Joe gave to me. Why Queen Elizabeth?
Because they got Big Ben up in London, so it's like Big Benz.
Oh,
wait, is it Benz like
B-E-N-Z?
Oh, like Mercedes Benz.
Yeah, like Mercedes.
Oh man. German car. Oh.
All right. What are we talking about today?
Well, you said that you don't give a fuck about bananas being fruits, but do you know what I give a fuck about? Citizens United.
Citizens United.
Now, for those of you watching at home, not listening, we were supposed to be in judge garments, so this little folder I'm holding, ASMR for the people listening.
Yeah, really, really rub it on there, like smack, like on the microphone.
This isn't porn.
I just want it to be a terrible audio experience, so everyone comes and watches on YouTube.
Yeah, subscribe, repost. No, so last week we briefly mentioned Citizens United. I spread some horrible misinformation by saying it was in the early 2000s. You spread even worse misinformation by saying it was in the 80s. It was in 2010, which is insane.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain it, but like I hear Citizens United and I think George Bush. I think the George Bush administration. It just is something that...
It seems very bushy.
Yeah. 9/11, Citizens United, housing market crash. George Bush. No child left behind. But no, so we mentioned it a little bit last week. I wanted to expand on it, talk about it in detail, because it's actually kind of one of like the biggest Supreme Court cases ever. So I know that you're not really like a legal person. My qualifications for those of you listening are that I have a pre-law degree. I never went to law school because I don't have a couple $100,000 lying around. But my pre-law program was an actual like law class program, so I didn't just like learn what the law is. I had to go to actual law classes as they would teach them in law school. So I'm not a lawyer, can't give legal advice, but I do know how to read court cases and really dissect them and understand what they're meaning.
Yeah, I just click I agree on every single terms and conditions I get. So that's my experience with the law.
I'm not a lawyer, but don't do that. But no, so in legal jurisprudence in academia.
Before we get started, everything he says is legal advice. Like you can take it and use it as you will. Anything I say, however, is not legal advice. So don't sue me, sue him.
I'm nervously sipping. Okay. So in law, in like academia, as it comes to law, there's these things called landmark Supreme Court cases, right? So these are the Supreme Court cases that you would think of as like really, really big and consequential and affecting a lot of people or everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of them is Marbury v. Madison, which was the Supreme Court case that gave the Supreme Court like jurisdiction to basically tell the government or tell people.
They decided that themselves?
Yep.
Hell yeah.
Welcome to the early, what was it, 18th century? Is that 1700? Yeah, because it's +1. Yeah, so the 18th century, they kind of were just winging it. They didn't really know what they wanted to do. So Marbury v. Madison was that. Another one would be like the Dred Scott decision, which said that enslaved people or freed and previously enslaved people couldn't be citizens, regardless of their status. Another one would be the Brown v. Board of Education, which is
the segregation,
ending segregation in schools. Roe v. Wade, which everyone refers to it as the abortion case. It's not. It just was stemmed by an abortion. But what it says is that the 14th Amendment covers, or the right to privacy covers, abortion, medical procedures, which is abortion.
Okay.
So it was about an abortion, but it was not the Supreme Court saying you can get an abortion. It's saying that that falls under medical privacy and the government cannot impede on that. Then there's things like Obergefell, which is gay marriage. There are some landmark Supreme Court cases that kind of take it a step further, that are super, super, super consequential and like affect everything. One of those would be like Marbury v. Madison, right? Because that literally set the ground for the Supreme Court to do everything afterwards. Yeah. I think joining it is Citizens United. I think it honestly is more important than anything that has happened in probably the past 200 years in the Supreme Court, because it's so, like, if you are wondering why anything politically is happening right now, you can trace it back to Citizens United. Now, Citizens United was not the starting point for all this. There was other things that kind of built up to it, but Citizens United was the nail in the coffin that really sent it in. So I prepared a brief. I'm going to go through my notes here. We're going to talk about it. Bodhi has no idea what I'm going to talk about, kind of background of it, so he's going to ask questions if he has them. Act as you guys listening. hopefully everyone has the same questions. Okay.
I understand everything perfectly the first time I hear it.
I'm gonna try and explain it in the simplest terms possible, because it gets convoluted. When I was writing this, I literally okay, everyone says not to use Wikipedia as a source. Wikipedia is a great source as a jumping off point. You read it, you kind of get like the outline, and then you use the blue links to go to other sources.
I feel like Wikipedia gets like it's the same mentality around it that, you know, when your parents are like, oh, there's like so much crime in big cities. I feel like it's the same sort of thing. Like they just heard somebody be like, Wikipedia is bad because anybody can edit it, and then they just didn't look further into it, and so they're like, Wikipedia is bad.
That's the whole thing. So even in grad school, I would use Wikipedia for all my papers, right? So what I would do is I would go, okay, I'm writing a paper on, I don't know, juvenile justice, right? So I would look up the specific topic and I would read through it, kind of get an outline of like, okay, this is kind of what's going on with it. Scroll to the bottom, all of the sources are there. You go read those sources, and then you read those sources, and then you just keep going like that. You find stuff, and that's where you're getting actual like academic sources.
I think the brain rot has fully taken hold inside of me, because when you said juvenile justice, I was like, that's what Big Justice should name his kid.
5 big booms. Citizens United gets 5 big dooms. Subtle foreshadowing. No. Okay. So we're going to go through this. I prepared a brief, just kind of a quick outline. We're going to talk about the case name, citation, and author. We'll talk about the facts of the case. That's just kind of like the background, like what led up to it. We'll talk about the procedural history, which is kind of like the court cases that led up to it. The issue that they were trying to answer, the holding, which was their answer to the issue, the rule, which is the subsequent like part of the ruling. So like typically
it's when they bang the gavel, right?
No. So typically the holding is, so the issue is usually a yes or no question, typically.
Okay.
Very vaguely yes or no. So it could be like, for example, in Roe v. Wade, the question was, does abortion fall under the right to privacy?
Okay.
Right. So the answer is, in that case, yes, it did. the rule would be that the government cannot, like, it's the expansion on the yes. So it's like yes, comma, because
gotcha.
The rule is the because, right? The reasoning and the rationale is like the justices, well, they're reasoning and rationale, like how they're justifying it, where they're pulling it out of. This is where you're going to see me get really angry, because these fucking justices are all textualists, and textualism makes no sense. For those of you who don't know what textual is, there's two ways to interpret the Constitution. There's textualism, and I think it's called like interpretationism.
Yeah.
Basically, textualism is exactly, it's just, this is what the words says. This is what the words on the paper are. We cannot assume what anyone wanted. And then interpretationalist is like, okay, they said that, but does that apply now? Like, does that make sense for now? So, for example, one of the big ones is the Second Amendment, It says, in order to maintain a well-regulated militia, the right to bear arms shall not be infringed upon, right? Well, we have a militia. It's the United States Army, the Navy, the Marines, the Space Force, and the Coast Guard.
God, I love the Space Force.
Love the Space Force. Oh, and the Air Force, sorry. Ooh, well, you see how important they are. So we have all those, right? So one could argue that yes, back then when the 13 colonies all kind of just banded together when there was a military problem to do their own thing, it was necessary for everyone to have guns. But an interpretationalist might say that's not necessarily necessary now, because we have a military, we have a militarized police force in every city that could also act as that. Each state has their own national guard. We don't need a well-regulated militia because we have one. We have a sanctioned, well-regulated militia that's funded by Congress. So citizens that are not part of that should not have the right to bear arms. That's just how someone might interpret the Constitution. Okay. And then the last is the disposition of judgment, which is like the same exact thing as it's kind of like the summary of everything. I didn't really do that here because it's kind of all self-explained, but we'll start. Okay, so Citizens United is officially titled Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission. So it was a private nonprofit suing the Federal Elections Commission. So the case number 558 US 310 parentheses 2010, docket number 08-205. So, facts of the case, in 2004, Citizens United, a conservative nonprofit, complained to the FEC, which is the Federal Elections Commission, which sets the rules for the elections in the United States, regarding a film directed by Michael Moore. He's the guy that did the climate change movie. I forget what it's called.
2012.
No, it's like a climate change documentary. He's like super, super liberal. He's like, I'm with her type of liberal. He was like an Al Gore like stan. He was like the original Al Gore stan. So the movie's called Fahrenheit 9/11, and it was about the events of 9/11. And the complaint from Citizens United, the conservative nonprofit, basically went to the FEC, and they basically said, hey, this film paints George Bush in an unfavorable light. And the issue is that there was a bipartisan campaign reform act that was passed in an effort to control big money from engaging in electioneering. So electioneering, it sounds really bad, but it's actually a really like benign term. It just means to basically campaign, like to speak on behalf of a candidate or on the cause of a candidate, right?
They should rename it then, because it sounds like you're engineering an election.
No, it is. I mean, that's literally what it is, but a lot of acts fall under electioneering, right? So if I'm, for example, an advocate, right? Let's say I'm a climate advocate, and there's a Democrat and a Republican running, and I say, well, Republicans typically are climate change deniers, you know, whatever. And I go and I put out a commercial and I say, hey, the Republican candidate's not great for the environment. I'm very pro-environment. You shouldn't vote. That's electioneering. That's me attempting to sway people's opinion to vote one way or the other, right?
I don't know if this is going to come up further in the document, but when you said the Citizens United group sued the filmmaker because they said it...
They made a complaint to the FEC.
Yeah. They made a complaint saying, hey, this paints our candidate in a bad light. Were they saying it was like... What's the written one? Libel?
No. So this is I'm gonna tell you how this kind of plays into it right now, actually.
Okay.
So basically, the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act, which, by the way, again, bipartisan, was passed by John McCain. and he was a large sponsor of it. The rule prohibited corporations and unions from funding broadcast advertisements mentioning a candidate 30 days before a primary or 60 days before the general election.
Insane for a Republican to pass that.
Well, this is the whole thing. Up until this point, it was very much frowned upon to have all this. And we'll get into the backstory of how all this like campaign finance laws came up, because it gets really murky. And I'm going to throw the Supreme Court a bone here, and I'm going to say I understand why they originally did allow money into politics. Like, the reasoning is there, but it's bad reasoning. And we'll get into, it's actually part of the dissent for this case, kind of my position personally.
Okay.
So Citizens United argued that since George Bush was running for re-election, it was a violation for Michael Moore to have put out this movie so close to, I think, the primary. And they took the complaint to the FEC. The FEC assessed it, and they basically said it's not a violation, and they dismissed the complaint, as well as a later complaint that was kind of argued using the Taft-Hartley Act. The Taft-Hartley Act amended labor laws regarding labor unions from also using their general treasury funds to election year, essentially, right?
Okay.
So it's very, like, the carve-outs for what you could and could not before this case were very, very specific. The issue that the FEC found was that Michael Moore was not he was not a political entity attempting to sway opinions against George Bush in regards to the election. He simply put out a movie as a private, like, person, as a private production. It was a commercial production. It went to theaters. It went just normal distribution. And they basically said, because he didn't have the intent to smear George Bush, it just painted George Bush. It criticized him, which is perfectly legal.
Yeah.
But he's not attempting to say, because this was 2004. So I think it was John Kerry that was running for president in 2004 for the Democrats.
He's not saying like, oh, John Kerry's so much better. George Bush eats babies.
He just said George Bush is bad, whatever. I haven't watched Fahrenheit 9/11, and I quite frankly am not going to. But like, he's just saying George Bush did something bad, or this kind of is the conclusion that George Bush is a bad person. Okay. So the FEC dismissed it under the BCRA, and then they dismissed it under the Taft-Hartley Act. I do want to note that the FEC was under the current Bush administration when this complaint was dismissed. Now,
so yeah, his own people are like,
I don't know exactly the extent. I probably should have looked this up, what the executive branch controls with the FEC. But again, this was in the middle of the Iraq War. So like the country was unified as far as like letting the Republicans take the helm. So if there was an issue with this, it makes sense
that the FEC made that choice then, because like you were saying, middle of Iraq War, everyone was like, oh my God, we need George Bush.
Yeah. So they dismissed it, right?
Yeah, there wasn't much you could put out to suddenly turn the majority of the populace against the president.
Right. Well, that's what they say. If you want to win a re-election, start a war.
Yeah.
Okay. So after this complaint was dismissed, Citizens United restructured, and they made their own documentary titled Hillary, the movie. The movie was released in the lead up to the 2008 primary, where Hillary Clinton, who was running in the primary for president.
Wait, how many times has she tried to be president?
2008, 2016.
Oh, okay.
Because no one contested Obama in 2012.
Yeah, because he got elected in 8. Yeah.
So 2008 was actually really funny because Hillary, Biden, and Obama all were in the primaries. And yeah, it's really funny because in both primaries, so in 2008, when Biden ran, he got kind of put out really quickly because they kind of attacked his character. Yeah. And then in 2020, when he ran, Kamala Harris, who was also running for president at the time, called him a segregationist. She went on to be his vice president. Biden was kind of a punching bag. But yes, so they restructured, they released this movie. And basically they wanted to pay, Citizens United wanted to pay cable providers to offer the film for free on demand. Okay. So they were going to distribute it to people's homes for free. There was no paywall. It was there. They were going to finance that themselves. They wanted to release it in January 2008. The Democratic primaries were in March, so that was within the 30. It was within the 30-day window of the beginning of the primary season.
Okay, so it's the window is from primaries. Ooh, excuse me. Primary season rather than the actual primary election.
There's a certain date. There's a certain, like, when people, because early voting and shit like that.
Yeah.
So they basically they released it. They wanted to release it within that 30-day window of whatever the date was that would have counted as electioneering, bad electioneering.
Wait, they wanted to do it in that time, or they just happened to?
No, they basically were doing malicious compliance.
Okay.
So they kind of were like, well, if Michael Moore can put out this movie, so can we. We can put out a discriminatory movie. The issue here, now this is the whole thing. So this is what I put in here as a note. Fahrenheit 9/11 was a commercial production by Michael Moore, like we discussed, set to be released and distributed as a normal movie. Went to theaters, it was just a normal movie. Whatever your conclusion was, whether you accept that George Bush was a bad person or not, that's you. You go and see that movie, right? Hillary, the movie, was sought to be a free release that Citizens United had to pay to offer for free on demand. So they were taking extra steps to make it more accessible to people.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like the difference between saying like, oh yeah, come over to my house, I'm putting on a magic show, and like going out on a busy street corner and doing magic.
Right. Or going out on a busy street corner doing magic versus saying, hey, come in this theater and pay $5 to get in and I'll do magic for you.
Yeah.
Right. So Citizens United was taking these extra steps to make this film available.
Yeah.
And the movie deliberately painted Hillary in a bad light, which is fine. That's not, if you want to criticize a politician, go for it.
Yeah.
But it violated the BCRA technically. So basically, they got docked for that. So this is where we're going to move into the procedural history. This is kind of where everything started falling into place, right? So Citizens United was sued for this release in the District Court of DC. And they sought an injunction, which was basically like a, no, they can go ahead and do this. Like, this doesn't violate it. Basically a ruling in their favor. To the rule of the BCRA that they didn't, that they could release it, right? Now, the interesting part is that their argument was not that they weren't electioneering, that they weren't doing all this stuff intentionally. They fully admitted to it. Their argument was that the BCRA, the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act, was unconstitutional. That was their argument.
The thing they wanted to employ previously, all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, this fucking sucks. We don't want it anymore.
Yep. So basically when it didn't work in their favor, they flipped and said, okay, well, it's unconstitutional because now it's not working for us.
Honestly, I can't blame them because I do that shit in Magic when I play Magic.
Right.
If there's a deck I hate playing against, I'm just like, fuck you, I don't want to play that.
In 2008, who was the president?
George Bush.
Yeah. So it's the administration hasn't changed. It's not like Obama's FEC was like, you can't do, it literally was the same exact FEC. It was less than 4 years later. So the kind of background of this. So Section 203 of the BCRA prohibited labor unions from funding certain political communications from their general treasuries. And then Section 201 and 311 required disclosure of donors to the BCRA communications when the communications are not endorsed by a supported candidate. So in this sense, what it's basically saying is Citizens United was very much like pro-Republican, right? It was a conservative group. So they would have supported McCain in 08, Bush in 04, Bush in 01, yada, yada, yada. Because they're a nonprofit that I guess in this case, probably McCain, right? Because he was, or whoever, the conservatives, the Republicans, did not come out and say like, we endorse the message by Citizens United, because they didn't come out and say that, because no political candidate came out and said like, I endorse this message. They were required to disclose their donors that were funding all of these electioneering efforts.
Gotcha.
So they basically said their argument was that it was unconstitutional because money is free speech. So that's 203 because that's the general treasury one, right? And then the other one was like a right to privacy as far as donors. So they wanted that to remain anonymous if people wanted to remain. Which, it's my opinion, is if you're gonna say something political, own it. Speak up. Say it with your chest.
Yeah, I agree. If you're funding something like that, whether it's endorsed or not, I think you should have your name put on a list.
I mean, hot take.
Not a list, but like your name should be listed.
No, I mean, hot take. If you're going to vote for something and you're not willing to like fess up and say like, I voted for that, do you deep down know that it's a bad thing to vote for? Like,
well, I mean, a lot of things that I saw with this most recent election would be conservative households, right? Husband votes Trump, but then the wife would vote for Kamala, but then she would either like lie or like not tell her husband because she's afraid of the backlash from voting against her.
That's the whole thing, is there's like those consequences, right?
Yeah.
But what are the consequences of saying, sure, I contributed $20 to the Citizens United Fund to smear Hillary. I don't like Hillary.
I mean, like that side of the coin, I don't think there's any consequences, but the other side of it,
I'm not saying you should like have to like legally. I mean, you can figure out who people voted for. Very easy.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is like from a logical standpoint, their argument that they want to have their donors remain anonymous. People should know who's funding shit. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I want to know where money's coming from.
Yeah.
Like, if $200 just showed up on my doorstep and I didn't know where it was from, I'm not touching that.
Oh, I'm touching it.
You're touching it?
Yeah,
when the cartel comes for you?
Yeah, I don't give a fuck whose money it is. I need it.
So anyway, so let's keep going here. So the DC court rejected Citizens United claim for multiple reasons. They cited a court case, Mitch McConnell, not just any last name. It was actually Mitch McConnell.
The turtle?
Versus Federal Election Commission in 2003, which was settled law. The case mainly dealt with mostly the same issues regarding the constitutionality of the provisions of the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act. Basically, the case noted that the BCRA might breach constitutionality if there's an undue burden imposed. This is exactly what I'm talking about. So it might breach constitutionality if there's an undue burden imposed on the freedom to associate in support of a particular cause adhering to financial disclosure laws. So it's basically saying, like, if you are revealed to be part of a group or to be in support of a cause, right?
Yeah.
If there's an undue burden on as a consequence of that. So your example, you have an abusive relationship, whether it be emotionally or physically, right? Husband's voting Trump, wife wants to vote Kamala because she's very much in support of reproductive rights or whatever that she morally supports. The undue burden there would be that she fears physical, mental, some sort of backlash that constitutes abuse.
Gotcha.
Right. So that, in a sense, would breach the constitutionality. But they kind of said it's not really punishment to support a conservative cause and then to have people say, like, I don't want to be associated with you, right? It's kind of the same way where a lot of people think that the First Amendment, the right to freedom of speech, means that you can say whatever you want
without consequence.
Yeah. So the first thing is that it's the government cannot police your speech, right?
Yeah.
If you come into my house and you say something I don't like, I can tell you to leave. Yeah, I can tell I don't like that.
You start tweeting like fucking Kanye,
yeah,
I'm throwing you off my balcony.
Right. That's I have no obligation to protect your freedom of speech because I'm not a government agent and I'm not acting as an agent of the government, right?
Yeah.
The other portion of it is you can say what you want, but there may be consequences. It's the same way that you see like people like at a sport. There was an example the other day or the other week. I think it was oh God, I want to say it was an Eagles fan from Philadelphia. At whatever playoff game they were at, some lady was like cheering for the opposite team, and there was like a group of Eagles fans or whatever the opposing team was behind them, and he was like calling her like a fat cunt and like all this shit. Like he was like really being kind of like a dick, right? People found his information, contacted his job and said like, do you guys associate with this guy? Like, are you backing that message? And they fired him. That's not a freedom of speech violation, because it's very much the company's prerogative to say like, you're a inherently bad person.
They said, we love fat cunts.
Yeah, love them. Juicy and just ripe. No, but, you know, it's within their rights to say, we don't want to associate with you. So in that sense, he was very much free to call the woman a fat cunt. but he was not free from those consequences. And that's kind of what the court was saying here, is like, you're free to support your conservative cause, but if there's not really an undue burden by us requiring you to disclose that you're supporting this, you know, your associations have consequences, right? It's kind of the same way, like, you can be a Nazi, but if no one wants to be around you, you can't complain. You can't force people to be around you.
Yeah.
Right? That's kind of a weird, convenient comparison, given this is Citizens United, a conservative action group. Okay. So they basically said that, and then they said Citizens United was in fact engaging in electioneering because it explicitly attacked Hillary's character in an attempt to label her as unfit for office. And when they did that, they argued, the court basically said that reaches the point of advocacy.
Gotcha.
So at that point, because they were a political, not a political action group, so they weren't a PAC. They were a conservative nonprofit. But again, in this sense, they were explicitly attacking Hillary's character and arguing that she is unfit for office. Whereas Michael Moore's documentary, and again, I have not seen it, so I can't speak on this. I'm just going off of what the court said. They said the film may narratively paint him in a bad light, but they are not arguing that George Bush is unfit for office. They were not saying George Bush is unfit, vote for John Kerry. They were just simply saying George Bush is an idiot. Yeah. This was a bad decision. Whatever.
Okay.
So at that point, it now gets appealed to the Supreme Court. So the issue that the Supreme Court had to answer was, do laws that prevent specifically the BCRA, corporations and unions from using their general treasury funds for political advertising, electioneering, violate the First Amendment's right to freedom of speech? So they ruled in a 5-4 ruling, and this is how you know it's a controversial case, because it's 5-4. They say yes. In fact, it does violate the First Amendment's right to free speech. And so the concurring justices was Chief Justice John Roberts, Justice Anthony Kennedy, Justice Scalia, Clarence Thomas, and Alito.
God damn, Clarence Thomas was there for this?
He's been there since 94.
Fuck that motherfucker.
Okay. Side note, there is a note in here about 6 inches down from where I'm at right now on this page that says, I hate Clarence Thomas. I am opposed to his politics, very much so, but I am more opposed to his judging style. As someone who like reads jurisprudence, his writing and like reasoning makes no sense. It just talks in circles. It does nothing. It's so unclear, and he just contradicts himself from case to case. It's so like every time there's this famous thing that he doesn't ask questions during oral arguments.
Oh, that's good.
So like if he asks, because everyone else asked the questions, so it's kind of like, oh, everyone asked the questions, I don't need to ask. So if he asks the questions, it's kind of like, ooh, Clarence Thomas asked a question, right? I think some people should be silenced.
Who put Clarence Thomas in?
First Bush.
Oh, horrific.
First Bush, yeah. Horrific. HW. Okay.
Do you have for each of the judges, like, whether they lean more left or right?
So Chief Justice Roberts is kind of a cuck.
Okay.
I again, like I said, I'm not necessarily trying to avoid being political, but
yeah,
fuck it. But also, I don't care if I'm Democrat or Republican. He's a fucking cuck. Like he's so spineless, it's ridiculous. He has no control over the court, and from an objective standpoint, he has zero control over his court.
Okay.
Like he's letting Alito fucking fly, flags at his house that are like in support of like insurrectionists. He's letting Clarence Thomas take millions of dollars from fucking Harlan Crow. Like, he's allowing Ruth Bader Ginsburg to fucking serve until she's 90 and dies. Like a real chief justice would have control over the court to say, like, we are going to be very strict about our conduct, and we're like, it doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican. The Supreme Court has historically been very like tight. Yeah. Like it's a tight ship.
Yeah.
I may not agree with the rulings, but like it's ran very tightly, and that's something I do respect. Chief Justice Roberts does not do that. He's just fucking spineless. It's ridiculous.
Also, which of these people are still there?
Chief Justice Roberts is still there.
Okay.
Anthony Kennedy is not there. He's kind of complicated. So he was technically more liberal, but he very much was a flip-floppy.
Okay.
So he could join, but the whole thing is all the justices are like that, right? They're very flip-floppy. There's only a few justices that are like hardcore one way or the other. Chief Justice Roberts is the most famous flip-floppy. He is like ultra centrist. It's kind of fucking ridiculous. It's like it's almost like he spins a wheel. And it's like, how am I going to decide today? Am I going to be a Republican or a Democrat? Oops, now you can't have abortion. Oops, now you can't have campaign finance laws. Like,
I feel like I would. I'm trying to decide if I would rather a justice decide one way politically as opposed to being more flip floppy. Because I can't think of like a conservative policy that would get brought up that I would agree with they should keep. But at the same time, I don't want them to be just insanely like one way and not deciding what they think is best.
So that's the real issue, right? So one thing you learn about when you learn how the Supreme Court makes their decisions, and they're super tight-lipped about this, so there's no confirmation, but it's kind of, accepted fact, right?
Mm-hmm.
The question comes to them, and they make a decision, right? So in this case, the issue was, do laws that prevent corporations and unions from using their general treasury funds for political advertising violate the First Amendment free speech? That came to them before they even read the merits of the case, before they heard oral arguments. They all made a decision.
Yeah.
And unless something gigantic comes up in oral arguments or briefs that changes their mind, they go, yeah, it does. It does. Just based off the top of my head, yeah, it does. And then they research laws to fit that narrative.
Okay.
So that's really the problem, right? It's not necessarily are they conservative or Democrat. It's all of them.
They got a problem with confirmation bias.
Yeah, and like the confirmation bias is rooted in their political ideology. But yeah, that's really what it is, right? And the issue kind of is like they don't have to do that because they can be impeached. It can happen, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So they have no benefit. Like, I know that like right now we have a 6-3 conservative majority, and there's like this whole thing about how 3 of the justices of the 6 that are conservative were appointed by Trump, so they're loyal to Trump, and it's like they have no obligation to.
Yeah.
Like even if Trump was like, I want these people impeached, they don't have the votes in Congress to do that because the Republicans who control the House control it by 4 votes, and the Republicans who control the Senate control it by 4 votes.
I mean, give it 6 months and he'll be like a full-on fascist dictator. So at that point, I would say if they want to keep their heads on their shoulders, they should.
Well, no, but that's the whole it on paper, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
on paper, they have no reason to be loyal. Like they're not getting anything out of it, right? I guess Clarence Thomas is getting shit out of it because he's
getting a fuck ton of shit out of it.
But okay, so we have Chief Justice Roberts, who is in the concurring. He's flip-floppy. He's still there. Anthony Kennedy, who's not there. He was lean liberal, but tended to be flip-floppy himself. Scalia, who is not there anymore. That was the one that was shot by Dick Cheney.
He was shot by Dick Cheney?
In a hunting accident.
Oh, yeah,
Legally, I have to say it was a hunting accident.
Yeah, I remember that.
He lived, but yeah.
Yeah.
He's dead. He was conservative. Scalia, I don't know. I don't respect many conservative justices. Scalia was, in the broadest of sense, okay. He was his politics were bad, in my opinion, but like he respected the institution. Is I guess the bar is on the ground in hell. It really is, yeah. But like he respected the institution, so I'll give him that. Clarence Thomas was in the concurring; he's still there, and Alito, who is still there. Clarence Thomas and Alito are like the 2 most conservative people on the court.
Yeah.
They are just like ridiculous. Okay. In the dissenting, we had Ginsburg. She's obviously not there anymore. She was lean liberal. Stephen Breyer, he is retired but still alive. He was lean liberal. Sotomayor, who is still there, lean liberal, and Justice John Paul Stevens, who is dead and also lean liberal and not there. So the 4 of them dissented. Okay. So the rule that they issued was that Hillary is covered, the Hillary film was covered by the First Amendment. That was political free speech, point blank. The reasoning and rationale is there's 7 kind of points that they made. Hillary's covered because the government cannot carve out an exception for free speech through regulatory interpretation. So basically they're saying free speech is free speech is free speech. Like, point blank. They're kind of going with the whole conservative, like, I can say what I want without consequences kind of thing. So the second thing that they leaned on was this case called Buckley v. Vallejo. This was kind of the OG money in politics law, or case, I guess I should say. So what you need to know about Buckley v. Vallejo, in short, is that essentially it was trying to get money out of politics, right? It was saying that you shouldn't be able to throw money as free speech. Like, money cannot count as free speech. And the Supreme Court in that ruled that people do donate to political campaigns all the time. And that is, in a sense, them throwing their support and therefore their voice behind a candidate, right? If I take $20, Kamala Harris, let me give her $20. That's me supporting Kamala Harris, right? And my support is my voice. And so that has to be allowed. And then they went further to say, this is kind of the slippery slope, right? They went further to say that there can be no limits on that. Because for the government to say money is free speech, but you can only give so much money, is for the government to essentially say you have spoken enough.
Yeah.
Right? So they're saying that is a limit on free speech. So Buckley v. Vallejo, they leaned on Buckley v. Vallejo and said, it's money. Money is free speech. Okay. So then they said the First Amendment does not explicitly this is what fucking pissed me off. The First Amendment does not explicitly distinguish media and other corporations from people. I want to.
Did they have corporations in 1776?
And it actually, it's the fucking phones listening to us, because right after I finished writing this brief, I was watching a whole video because it came up on TikTok, and it was like one of those like YouTube videos that was like cut into a TikTok.
Yeah.
It was about corporations back in the early like days of, right? They existed, but they existed with a sole purpose and then dissolved.
Interesting.
So, for example, I'm Apple. I'm gonna put out a smartphone.
I'm Orange.
Apple, like the fucking smartphone company, right? I'm Apple. I'm Steve Jobs. I'm gonna make the iPhone because I want to make an iPhone. I release it. I sell it. Company's dissolved. I want to make another iPhone. Got to make Apple 2.
I mean, that's kind of what happened because Steve Jobs dissolved.
Well, he died of cancer. Yeah. But what I'm saying is like they were goal oriented, right?
Yeah,
so once they reached a goal, no more company. Done. So Tesla, we want to make an electric car. Okay, we put out the Model S, I think was the first one. Okay, we're done. Now you have to make Tesla another company to say, okay, we're going to put out the Model 3. Or then we're going to put out the Model X. Then we're going to put out the Model Y. Like, once they've achieved their goal, the corporations would dissolve. I don't know when it happened, but there was a transition where then they kind of started toting the line and really kind of pushing the boundaries of, well, now we're going to do a little bit of profit. Like, corporations existed to serve a purpose.
I was about to say, is modern day corporations
super different from what they
but is their goal before they dissolve not just we're going to make money, and then once they stop making money, they're like, okay, we made our money, and then they dissolve?
Yes, but I guess the motivation was to complete the goal back then. It was not rake in as much money as possible. Of course, you wanted to make a profit. Everyone wanted to make a profit. I don't think there's an inherent problem with that, right? To say like, oh, I'm gonna be a fucking clothes maker, right? I'm gonna make t-shirts. Cost me $10 to make this t-shirt. I'm gonna sell it for $20. That way I get a $10 profit on every t-shirt. I don't think that's bad, right? But when I start saying, okay, it cost me $5 to make this t-shirt now, I'm still gonna charge people $20. I'm increasing my profit margins, and then I'm gonna get 10 more people to help me make these t-shirts so I can make them faster. I'm gonna pay them minimum. Like, that's the transition, right? Was that people started getting greedy and extorting people for money. So basically the First Amendment does not explicitly distinguish media and other corporations from people. So it just says there is a right to free speech. Therefore, it must apply to every entity. The house has free speech. The street has free speech.
There has to be something in there that's like
mentions people
problem
explicitly.
With
textualism, dude. This is my problem. Is it just or like it's not there, so we can't say it's there. Whereas an interpretationalist might say, okay, there were no corporations when the Constitution was written, or the corporations that existed did not exist as they did now. It's the same way that some people will argue back then the right to bear arms covered muskets.
Yeah.
A gun that takes 10 minutes to reload versus now I can go get an AK and fucking unload hundreds of rounds.
Yeah.
In seconds, you know? That's the issue. We're going to keep going here because I'm going to get really mad. Okay. So the fourth point was that the First Amendment protects the individuals as well as associations of the individual. So they went a step further here. And corporations are associations of the individual, right? So what it's saying is let's say you have, oh God, I'm trying to think. Oh, PETA. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So the bread.
The political.
Oh, the animal rights.
Yeah, animal rights.
Oh,
there
gotcha.
we go. I couldn't think of that. So let's say I myself, I don't eat meat, right? I try to eat vegan all the time, but I still eat cheese and ice cream and dairy stuff. I just don't strict thing.
Mm-hmm.
So if I say, okay, I'm fully in support of PETA. I like PETA's message. I'm going to throw them $20. They now become part of my free speech because they are amplifying my voice. They have the platform to amplify my voice. I'm merely giving them a portion or the means, a small portion of the means to amplify my voice.
Okay.
It's kind of like lobbyists, right? So, you know, you might have the fucking fossil fuel lobby, right? If I'm super in favor of like fracking,
mm-hmm.
I might donate $20, right? I might be a fracking executive VP of like an oil company, right? I might throw, you know, a few $1,000s to a lobbyist and say, go to DC. I don't have time to go do that. Go to DC and whip the votes to expand, you know, drilling.
Mm-hmm.
That's free. They're arguing that's free speech because you are using your voice to tell a bigger group who has the time and means and ability to go do that. So in this sense, they're saying that all of the people who contribute financially to Citizens United were kind of investing in them to amplify a message for them.
Okay.
And the issue also is this. I didn't really write this in here, and we're not going to cover the court cases that established it, but the Supreme Court has ranked free speech and the types of free speech that are allowed, like in order of importance. And at the top is political.
Okay.
So they're saying like political free speech must be treated with the most hands-off approach possible. Like it needs to be restricted the very, very least, right? It's the reason that, like, for example, you can't shout fire in a movie theater.
Yeah.
Because that's not political free speech. So they're saying, okay, there's a little wiggle room for us to reasonably put some restrictions there.
But if you said there's a gay fire, would that be protected?
I don't think that's political.
Okay.
I don't think that's political. But for example, another example is if I go out on the street, I'm a white guy, if I go out on the street and I start dropping hard R's,
mm-hmm.
right? I could say that. But a police officer could also come up and say, hey, you're making everyone uncomfortable, man. Cut that out. If I don't obey them, I'm either an obstruction of justice. I could be harassing people. Someone could file a harassment claim against me. Or I could be disturbing the peace. Right? If I'm in a, like, let's say I'm in like a business, like in a restaurant, I just get up and I start shouting the N-word.
Mm-hmm. As
right?
you do.
Yeah, all the time. as someone who listened to Brockhampton when I was a teenager. No, so it could be a disturbance of the peace, right? Mm-hmm. That's not political speech. It is hate speech. Hate speech is protected. You're very free as a white guy to go out and shout the N-word. But again, that has consequences, and they're saying there is wiggle room for you to be charged with disturbing the peace or harassment or something like that. Political speech, on the other hand, is like you cannot police that. Like it has to be completely unrestricted.
Mm-hmm.
One of the dumbest decisions in my mind, right? Because they do that in Germany and it works out just fine. Because in Germany, you can't fly Nazi paraphernalia.
Yeah.
You can't do all that. If you do that, you go to jail.
Yeah.
And everyone argues, oh, it's a slippery slope. It's a slippery slope. We just fucking banned TikTok. That's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
Like we're already on the slope, so we might as well just actually ban the bad stuff while we're at it. You know, that's a whole other conversation. But what the fourth point is making is that the individuals use things like Citizens United to amplify their voice, and that's political speech, so that can't be policed.
Mm-hmm.
Chief Justice Roberts, being annoying, wrote a concurring opinion. So basically, the Supreme Court will issue an opinion. It's usually penned by one person. And then the people that are like, yeah, I'm for that, like I'm in the majority, can also write like different things. So like if they all agree, let's say there's 3 points they want to make and they all agree on it. But then like one guy's like, oh, I have a fourth point. They're like, we don't agree with that. Mm-hmm. They'll put all 3 points in the main opinion, and then anyone that's in that majority can write a concurring opinion, which is kind of like like, I want to add this, just my opinion kind of thing. So Roberts writes a concurring opinion defending the court's overturning of stare decisis, which is basically the respect for the rule of past precedent, right? Which, if that sounds familiar, that's them overturning Roe v. Wade, right? So
stare decisis is them overturning past stuff. The
stare decisis is the respect. So basically, it's saying like, so stare decisis would have looked like this in 2022 when the fucking Dobbs decision came down, overturning the right to abortion. Stare decisis would have said, hey, we already settled this way back in Roe v. Wade. Settled law. We're not going to hear this. We're not going to whatever. Or we'll reaffirm it, or we're not going to hear it.
Okay, so stare decisis is just respecting the past decisions.
Right. Basically saying settled law, right?
Okay.
So Roberts writes, concurring and saying, hey, sometimes we do have to kind of overturn. We have to go back and disrespect stare decisis a little bit. And the reasons he gave were basically things like the Dred Scott decision said that black people can't be citizens. They went back and overturned that, right? Yeah. So he basically is saying like we sometimes have to go back and do that. But it's like,
okay, I don't disagree with that statement in a nutshell.
In a nutshell, but it's two completely separate situations. We're not talking about slavery here. We're talking about money and politics. It's just apples and oranges, man. Apples and oranges. Okay. Scalia also wrote a concurring opinion on the grounds that the First Amendment covers speech, not speakers.
Wait, he's concurred with this?
It is the right to free speech. It is not the right of speakers to have free speech. So they have to. He's saying the court needs to look at it from the angle of the action of releasing Hillary, of allowing an unlimited flow of money into politics is free speech. And the First Amendment says you have the right to free speech. It doesn't specify who the speaker has to be.
The fuck? I feel like that's not that hard
it's
to like.
So fucking frustrating, man. Like, it's just like it's petty. It's just petty. It really is. It's them making a decision and saying I need to find a way to justify this, right? There's I saw a TikTok. I haven't looked too far into it. The Justice Department issued a memo Thursday or Friday that, from my understanding, reinstates it ends the moratorium on the death penalty. Federal moratorium that Biden put, right? And they put something in there that suggests that they might want to tack on illegal immigration
to the death penalty.
Right. They don't say it explicitly, but there's like an Oxford comma in there that like is plausible deniability.
They just put in the death penalty at the end.
I didn't read. That's what I'm saying. I didn't read it, but I was watching someone explain it, and they were saying that there's like an Oxford comma in there that for a stupid petty judge could look at it and say, well. You know, well,
they're giving them the little pieces to make bullshit decisions.
Yeah,
gotcha.
Yeah. So that's essentially what Scalia is doing. Is he's saying, well, it doesn't say the speakers have the right to free speech. It's saying that free speech must exist.
I think it's not that hard to figure out. We need another amendment to the Constitution. I don't know when our last one was. I don't know what number we're on. We're gonna say 37.
27.
Okay. Well, this is going to be 37. We're gonna skip 28 through 36.
There already is a 28.
Okay, we're going to skip 29 through 36, and this is going to be 37. Free speech, you only got that if you have a mouth, not a mouthpiece, a fleshy, organic mouth.
Do you know how hard it is to amend the Constitution? You know, just general civics, do you know? This is not like a gotcha moment. I'm not trying to like make you feel like most people do not know how hard it is.
I'd say probably 2 honey packs hard.
2 honey packs hard.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you this right now. If either party had a supermajority, a veto-proof and filibuster-proof majority, they still couldn't pass an amendment.
We were just banging those shit out back in the day. What happened?
Because they agreed on stuff.
Oh.
Like, it was a generally acceptable thing to say, like, hey, we should abolish slavery. Like, it was generally accepted that, like, that's a pretty important thing, right?
Yeah.
It was generally pretty accepted to say, like, women should also have the right to vote. Now, that passed on a hair, like by the skin of someone's teeth, but it still was generally accepted. It's 2/3 of both houses have to either call a constitutional convention, or I think it's 2/3 of the states, I want to say, to call it, right? Then what they can do, so if the states pass a constitution, then it has to get ratified by 2/3 of the House and 3/4 of the states, which is 38 out of 50 states.
Wait, the states pass it.
So if the states, it's okay. So you know how if the House of Representatives pass something, it has to go to the Senate, and then the Senate has to agree, and then it goes to the president. But the Senate can pass something, and then it goes to the House. It's the same exact concept, right? So the states can pass it, and then it goes to Congress.
Then Congress can do it, then it goes to the states. Gotcha.
Either way, 2/3 of Congress, 3/4 of the states have to ratify it. You're trying to get 38 out of 50 states to agree on something. What is that something? It would have to be a like life-changing thing. It's just not going to happen. We don't have, and the way it does is it goes to the state houses. It's not an election. It's not, oh, you know, District 5 in California, you know, how do you vote? Yes or no on this? It is, hey, California State Legislature, how do you vote on this?
Oh, so it's the state legislators that vote for it. There's not like a special election where we vote on it.
We do not vote. We vote via the republic system, which is appointing people, you know. So it's just not going to happen.
Okay.
So where were we? Okay. We said Scalia. Okay, this is where Clarence Thomas comes in, everyone.
Boo.
Get your migraine pills ready.
Boo.
I can't with him. So sorry. Okay. Thomas wrote that in a stroke. Do you see how bad his fucking opinion is? It's just,
he's taking away your free speech.
Taking away my free speech. Okay. He wrote, anonymous speech is free, and that in cases of requiring identification, it could lead to retaliation by elected officials.
What, you think fucking George DeSantis is gonna come into your house and spank you? What does that mean, retaliation by elected officials?
He's basically saying that, so in this case, he's saying that they do not have to reveal their donors, because if they, in a good faith effort, hated Hillary, put out a hit piece on her, and she still won the election, she could go after them. Possibly. Maybe. Who knows? But it could. Therefore, we have to take it as yes.
Okay.
I wrote in here, it's important to note that the First Amendment protects the government from punishing you for restricting your free speech, but not from consequences. So I think a good example of this is January 6th. The people that went to the Capitol very much, and I'm going to sound a little conservative here, but they very much had a right to go to the Capitol to protest, right? To say, we object to the 2020 election results. We don't believe that they're right?
Yeah.
They had the right to go there and assemble. They didn't have the right to break in and do all that shit, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But once they breached that point of turning it into a riot, I think that Joe Biden and the worst attorney general we've ever had, Merrick Garland, very much had the right to say, you have committed these federal offenses in an attempt to express your free speech. Therefore, we are going to prosecute you for that, right?
Yeah.
You were more than welcome to say, I didn't win this election. What you're not more than welcome to do is storm the Capitol and kill police officers, right?
Yeah.
Try to kill elected officials, all that crap.
They should have drone strike the building.
We do have the 10th Amendment, which is the right to revolution. But like, it goes beyond that, right? And so it's more of it's Clarence Thomas essentially saying you can have your cake and eat it too. You can have your free speech and be free of consequences, is what he's trying to say. And it's so absurd because he probably, I don't know when, but he will inevitably come back and argue the exact opposite thing when it's in favor of a Republican cause.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what really frustrates me. We're going to move on because it's going. Okay. So now let's get to the dissenting opinions here. The dissenting opinions, John Paul Stevens wrote the majority. Interestingly enough, there was no concurring dissents. It was a very unified message. It was a 90-page dissent, and he actually read part of it from the bench, which is pretty substantial. They don't usually do that. So he took a more ethics-based approach, or the dissenters took a more ethics-based approach.
Okay.
And they argued that democracy could not function properly if the people believed that their laws were being bought and sold. So they kind of basically were saying, yeah, we understand the whole like money can be free speech, right? Sure, if you're having a candidate run for office and they want to, and you know, John Smith from Sacramento, California wants to throw $20 to that candidate. Sure, that's fine, not a big deal. But if someone who has billions of dollars, like Elon Musk, can simply just say, well, I'm going to dwarf that $20 campaign donation to Kamala Harris by giving $250 million to Trump. That's in effect buying the election for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a level playing field because everyone's vote in theory should count equally. And that's not fair for someone who is ultra wealthy to come in and just curb stomp anyone else's donation, right?
Yeah.
So they kind of took that approach and they just said that it will degrade. It's kind of like, yes, we agree that money is political speech and to limit it is to say that you've spoken enough, but we have to at some point look at it rather than idealistically, we have to look at the realistic implications of this. And the realistic implications is that it will cause people to lose faith in democracy because all they're going to see is billionaires fighting back and forth over a particular candidate or particular candidates. Right?
Yeah.
Let's see. It's important to note that it could be argued it's not SCOTUS's job to determine laws like this, right? It's more so they're there to answer yes or no. Is this in the Constitution or not? It's Congress who is responsible, and they often do this, right?
Yeah.
So recently, have you heard of the Chevron deference?
Nope.
Okay, so you know how
maybe, but I don't remember.
They just overturned it. This was another stare decisis shit. So last year they overturned this case. Basically, you know how there's like the FEC, the FAA, the FTC, well, you know, all that shit, right?
Oh yeah, this was the thing that was saying like
it's Congress.
Government.
Congress basically said like we cannot in good faith be experts on everything. Like it's just impossible.
Yeah. And
B, we cannot in good faith make laws for every tiny little thing. Like it's just not going to happen. We don't have the time for that. It's impossible. So we are going to create these institutions and put them under the authority of the executive branch, and then they will create policies based off of their goals. So for example, the Environmental Protection Agency, their goal is to protect the environment. So they can issue rules based off of their expertise because it's going to be staffed by a bunch of people who are climate scientists.
Yeah.
Right? Climate experts. So they will say, hey, we are in agreement that lead gasoline is super bad for the environment. We're going to phase out lead. They're going to issue that rule. What the Supreme Court did in their overturning is that Congress did not explicitly accept the rule. They did not issue the rule. Congress is the only person who can pass laws.
Yeah, and then the overturning of that essentially took away the executive branch's power to regulate corporations and shit,
to
right?
regulate anything.
Yeah.
Right. So essentially, right, in this sense, the case that brought this up was like a fishing thing, right? So they basically, it was part of the EPA actually.
Mm-hmm.
In order to protect the ocean and like species of fish, the EPA created a rule that said these fishermen going into a certain part of the ocean out in the Atlantic had to have a certified, nonpartisan, non-EPA, non-fisherman affiliated, like third party out there with them to supervise the fishing expeditions to make sure that they are adhering to the laws. But they also had to pay for that. So the fishermen sued, and they didn't say it's bad if you're issuing that law, you have to pay for that, like it has to come from the budget.
Mm-hmm.
They just said that the whole thing is unconstitutional. The whole thing of you regulating us is unconstitutional because Congress did not say, you said that it's bad for us to overfish in the spot, but Congress did not take that and accept it. So what the Supreme Court said is, they do this quite frequently, is they say Congress did not say this.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's actually one of the reasons that I'm personally not worried about the 14th Amendment thing with the birthright citizenship, because Congress explicitly said that. Like there is notes. Like it is explicitly written down of what Congress intended birthright citizenship to be, and like what it means, and like how it like is completely undeniably like a fact, right?
Okay. And
so what the Supreme Court is saying with the Chevron deference is, let's say the EPA says, okay, lead gasoline is bad. We want to phase it out. So we're going to issue that rule. Congress would then have to turn around and take that rule, put it into a bill, vote on it, pass it, send it to the president signs it, and now it's a law. They basically have to codify the rule.
But wait, didn't you said Congress is the one that created the agencies,
and that's the whole thing. So the original rule for Chevron deference said yes, because Congress created the agencies, they're signing off on the agency's authority to do that. Now the Supreme Court's walking that back and saying, actually, no, all they did was create the agencies in an effort to make the rules. They have to come back and codify that.
What?
Yeah. You see why I hate the Supreme Court?
They're so
fucking, and that's what
they did exactly what they were supposed to do.
Right.
Well, I mean, I don't know the exact word of the law, but from what you're telling me, the Supreme Court mindset is Congress needs to like say what they are doing, vote on it, put it into law. And what they said they were doing was creating a bunch of federal agencies to be experts in different fields and regulate them because they don't have the time, they don't have the means, blah, blah, blah. And then a few years later, Supreme Court is just like, actually, I know that they said it and it's right there on that piece of paper, but they didn't say it directly enough.
Yeah. So no, literally. So what they're saying is, they're saying we recognize that they have the authority to create these agencies, these authorities.
Mm-hmm.
They make the rules, and then you come back and have to codify it. So essentially, they're advisory boards. They're reducing them to advisory boards.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So stupid. So stupid, right? So essentially, the kind of the underscore that Stevens writes is that it can be argued, right, that it is Congress's responsibility if they wanted money to get out of politics, right? That it's their response. It's not the Supreme Court's jurisdiction to decide whether or not money should be in. Mind you, this whole thing started with an argument over the Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act passed by Congress. So what Stevens is saying is, there was like Congress did speak on this. Like,
yeah,
they gave a legit reason and made a law. So they're determining, what the law should be. And so he argued that denying Congress the right to safeguard democracy and improper influence to elections is to deny the nation's security and protection of an individual's voice or speech. So it goes back to the same thing I was saying of like, they understand that like money is speech. They recognize that. They're fine with that. But it is a little unfair and a little unprotected to have one person who has, like you and me who make, under $100,000 throw $20 once at a campaign. versus someone like Elon Musk, who makes hundreds of $1,000s a second, throw $250 million. They're basically saying that like that's not the protection of my and your speech because we don't have the ability to.
Gotcha.
So they argued that Buckley v. Vallejo, that's the one that originally allowed money, an unlimited amount of money into campaign, was in theory fine because it allowed the money to come in, but it left the door open for Congress to decide how much. Like if you read the language of Buckley v. Vallejo, they kind of were like, but Congress needs to, like, we're gonna open up the road, but Congress needs to install the guardrails.
Gotcha.
Congress did install the guardrails when they passed the BCRA.
Mm-hmm.
So they're just walking Congress back. That's what they're like. They're just fighting back and forth with this shit. Stevens also dissented on the merits of the fallout. He basically said that if we're going to go with the whole, like Clarence Thomas's whole, like, well, this is a possible thing, so we have to treat it as an actual fact. He said that corporations could effectively blackmail politicians with negative press. I think a good example of this is Jeff Bezos and the Washington Post. I think one that he owns.
Yeah.
So effectively, like he could run smear pieces against Kamala, which they didn't run smear pieces against Kamala, but they very much minced words with the things that Trump was saying. So like that rally that he had at Madison Square Garden was a bitch. We hate Haitians. We hate immigrants.
Just a repeat of that.
We want this
1930s Madison
where it was
Square
like
Garden
very
rally.
much like a vitriol-filled like hate fest. It was Trump draws thousands to Madison Square Garden rally was the headline. Like that's not a responsible headline.
Yeah.
So it's basically saying that like Jeff Bezos could go to Trump and say like, "Oh, I'm gonna run this," right? You don't tax break. Meta could go to Trump and say like, "Oh, we're gonna really ramp up our fact checking." Tax break. In effect, Elon Musk went to Trump and said, "Here's $250 million. Do what I say, or else you're not getting this $250 million." That's what Stevens was worried about, right? We are.
Is there anything to stop it from going the other way? Like, say Trump went to the Zuck and was like, "Hey, ramp down your fact checking and I'll give you a tax break."
No.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep. It kind of works both ways. So they also argued that corporations are not covered under the words "we the people." So they take a textualist standpoint and they fire back at that, right? We the people. They're saying it actually does say in the Constitution, people.
I was thinking about that. I was like, surely it says there's like...
Not in the First Amendment. It says it in the preamble.
Yeah, you know, just the thing that's like in front of everything else.
Yeah, just the prologue, you know, just the thing that you need to read before you actually read the full like body.
Yeah.
So they said that the words corporations are not covered under "we the people," and that the court had a duty to intervene. Right? They're kind of going back to Marbury in here. They had a duty to intervene in the interest of preserving democracy because it lessens the individual's right to determination and speech. Effectively, it increasing corporate speech decreases the powers of the individual's speech. So what they're saying is essentially, we recognize that sometimes like we kind of are only like supposed to rule on, but we do have to use our power for like sense good. Like we need to step in, is what he was saying. Is like it can be argued this way, but if we go with the whole like textualist, you know, say corporations can't do this in the Constitution, we are allowing other people's free speech to be stifled.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of like it's like a trolley situation, right? But the trolley is, if I pull the lever, I'm going to kill millions of people, versus if I don't pull the lever, I'm not going to kill anyone at all. Like it's not a real trolley problem where you're either killing one or like a bunch. You're literally not doing anything or doing something.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what Stevens was saying is, you know, if we allow this unlimited amount of money, we are going to be stifling other people's free speech. And our first duty is to the people, not to businesses, not to political committees, not to politicians. It is to the people. We are servants of the people. Therefore, we need to protect the interests of the people. And sometimes the court needs to step in and say, for the good of the people, in the interest of preserving their rights, we need to pull this lever.
When was the last time they said that?
What do you mean?
Like, for the good of the people instead of for what I want to happen.
Oh God. Honestly, I guess Obergefell.
What was that one?
Gay marriage.
Oh, what was that? 2015.
But it really wasn't a good of the people. It was more so like a religious thing. It was like religious like opposition to it, and because the whole thing is like I think it was like a clerk who was acting on behalf of the government was refusing marriage. Well, no. So it wasn't really for the good of the people. It was more so the government cannot be religious. Like, we cannot implement a religious objection to gay marriage, because that would be stifling other people's religion, because other religions don't necessarily say gay marriage is bad.
Yeah.
So it really wasn't like a for the good of the people thing. It was more so just like this is a very blatant of the separation of church and state.
Yep. Well, there's an even more blatant one that just happened. I don't know if you saw, but there's now the Department of Faith in the federal government.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
cool little fact. I know that's also another violation of separation of church and state. In the Pledge of Allegiance.
In God we trust. Or One Nation Under God.
Yeah. That didn't get added until the 70s, I believe.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
It was Red Scare propaganda, because they were saying communists
are atheists.
Yeah. Weren't God-fearing individuals, and so they added the under God to our Pledge of Allegiance.
I'm going to say something super controversial here. I don't necessarily I do absolutely oppose not separating church and state. I'm going to get that out of the way. But it is a fact that most of the laws in the world are, I guess you could say, remnants of religious texts, right? Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not kill. Murder, stuff like that. Thou shalt not, I don't know what the 10 Commandments are, but adultery in the Bible is a sin, right? Adultery now can be a civil offense.
Yeah, but that's not a law.
It is a law.
It's not illegal to cheat on your wife.
No, but you could be sued for it.
Yeah, but it's not a law.
But it's in the code. It's a civil code. It's part of the law. It's not like you're going to jail, but you can be held liable for it. That's like the difference between a no-faults divorce and I don't know what the other thing is called, but basically I'm divorcing you because you cheated on me, and that violates our prenup, or that you're not getting any alimony from me.
Okay.
Right. But I took a class that was literally English and law, and it was all of these ancient texts that were religious texts that were very much you can see where they came from, where our laws come from, and they're all religious. So it's not necessarily inherently bad, right? It's more so what we accept to be acceptable and reasonable versus what we don't. The issue is that things like the opposition to homosexuality, that didn't appear in any common print of the Bible until pretty recently.
Yeah.
Right? But even then, the argument of gay people shouldn't be allowed to get married is almost entirely rooted in Christianity or in religious, right? Because there's other religions that also say that. But the idea of you shouldn't kill someone is a well accepted, just moral thing. It kind of transitioned beyond.
Well, yeah, because I feel original religion, back in the day, we were trying to figure out how to survive to the best of our ability. We were making like advancements in different technologies and shit, but there were, before like government as we know it now was established, there was pretty much just like the monarchies and shit like that. And then even before like the Dark Ages and the monarchies and all that, it was just like, yeah, watch out, God's gonna get you if you do these bad things. And that's how they kept people under wraps. Like instead of the threat of being arrested, going to jail, they had the threat of, you will get a lightning bolt shoved so far up your ass your brain will explode.
It's gotta feel good. Not the exploding brain, but like the lightning bolt up your ass. I don't know. I have a little bit of a jolt. I used to electrocute. Did I tell you about this ever?
No.
You waterboard yourself and I electrocute myself. Okay. So in high school, I had an outlet. You know when your outlet has like a loose pussy?
No, what do you mean?
Like, your electrical outlet, you plug it in, the cord like falls out.
I don't think I've ever had that happen. Oh, I mean, like, if you like pull on it too much when you're vacuuming like, or something,
like you put it in and it doesn't catch. Like it's not.
It just falls out right away.
Not like right away, but it's very like you brush up against the cord, or you pull the cord in like a way that is not like super gentle. It's gonna like just fall right out of the thing. So my mom called my uncle because he is a general contractor, and so he had like very minimal electrical experiences, and so he came. And he like opened up the thing, and you know how there's like the plate covering it?
Yeah.
He left it exposed because he was like, he had to get something from the store or whatever, but he wasn't coming back to the day or whatever. And the outlet was right next to my bed, so I would like, charge my phone in there. And I went to charge my phone and plugged it in, and it electrocuted me. Like, and it hurt, but it felt good. I was like, ooh, that hurt, but like it felt good. And it lasted for like 10 seconds. Like I literally was sitting there like this for like 10 seconds, and then I like, you know, I didn't have like any black marks or anything like that. It just felt like a phone was vibrating inside of my body is like the best way to describe it, right? And then like my arm was like numb afterwards because it tenses you up.
Yeah.
So the next day I have a math test, and I was like, I'm gonna fail this test. I get a fucking 98% on this test.
Like, and I'm gonna treat myself and touch the outlet.
No, so I literally was like, it must have been like the electrical currents opening up something in my brain. Like it must have like opened my brain to being more like aware and like it absorbs the fucking material better. So from that point on, for the rest of the semester, I would shock myself before every single math test that I took so that I passed this class. And it worked. It worked for 4 out of the 5 tests that we took. And then the last test I got a C. So I was like, oh, well.
Yeah, I don't think it worked for any of the tests you took, to be honest.
It felt good. Have you ever been electrocuted?
I used to take 9-volt batteries and I would stick them on my tongue because I like the way it tasted. Like I would take the positive and the negative contact and then just and then you could feel it like zap you a little bit.
Yeah.
Or like those, hey, fucking have a piece of my gum, and then it's like a little zap.
My mom has a game. We were there the other day. She has a game called Hot Potato, and it literally has fucking electrical plates all like pass it and it just buzzes at around time and shocks you. And there's a mode called Extreme. And it fucking like literally like seized me up. I think it feels so good. The 9-volt doesn't feel good to me, but the reason that the electrical out one felt good to me was because it seized my muscles up. Have you ever used, I think it's called a tinge unit. It's like those like pads that you like.
I've never used one.
But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I had one of those when I lived with my parents, and it feels good because it contracts your muscles and like it like makes your muscles like flex, and then it releases them, so it like releases tension. And I think that's why I liked it, because it like kind of made me feel like a factory reset.
I'm gonna bring a taser to the next episode.
No, it'll make me piss. I've been tased. It hurts. It's so uncomfortable.
But you like being shocked.
It's a different type. It's a different voltage.
So?
It's more painful.
Just halfway through next episode, I'm just gonna reach over on your knee.
Like just the stun gun, or like an actual like fucking
No, not the thing. You can't buy those. I'm pretty sure.
No, you can.
Legally?
I'm sure you can. Oh, you know what? Maybe I was looking it up in Nevada. In Nevada, you can.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Nevada, you could do anything.
Yeah.
No, but real quick, so just going back to the Supreme Court thing. So the fallout from this is that they essentially basically were like, unlimited money, unlimited sources, whoever wants to contribute can contribute.
Yeah.
So here we are now, right? You see in 2016, Russia tried to interfere with our election by pumping money to it. In 2020, Elon Musk was pumping $250 million. And that doesn't, I'm not going to sit here and say that absolves it. Because the Democrats were literally toting their billionaires around. Mark Cuban, who I hate to use the word ethical billionaire because there are no billionaires, right? But he is a sensible person. He's very transparent about the taxes he pays. Like he literally is like,
he's about the best it gets.
Yeah, I mean the tax rates are super low for billionaires right now, but he like every year posts like, hey, this is my earnings, this is my net worth, I just paid taxes, I did not use any loopholes, like I just paid $200 million in tax. Like kudos to him, bars in hell, I guess, but like, you know, they were toting around Mark Cuban, you know, as their little billionaire. You know, Taylor Swift, who is a billionaire, Kamala Harris. So, you know, it's not just the Republicans, right? It's everyone.
Yeah.
It's everyone. And it's just led to this thing of like, which billionaire do you side with?
Yeah.
And that's an oligarchy. It's an oligarchy, like whatever way you spin it, right? Because the reality is, the way I look at it, because a lot of people were like, oh, it's very weird that Mark Zuckerberg and Meta took this like random turn all of a sudden and aligned with Trump, right? And fun fact, Elon Musk was in Trump's cabinet back in the first administration. Very briefly, he was an advisor on like some environmental committee, and then Trump was like, I'm anti-climate change, and Elon Musk was like, dude, climate, it's changing.
Yeah. And
so he left. But a lot of people were like, oh, Mark Zuckerberg backed Obama, and he backed Biden, and he backed, you know, why is the tide, what changed, right? What changed is that I don't think that the ultra wealthy are any bit different across the board, right? Because you have evil, like genuinely evil billionaires, right? People who are like, I fucking hate poor people. I hate, you know, people like David Zaslav, the CEO of WB. He's fucking shelving movies, deleting them, you know, using them for tax breaks. Yet he gets a $30 million payday. Like, you know, just genuinely evil. Then you have people like Cuban, who's like, oh, I started my prescription company that sells drugs at a 15% markup from cost. And we're very transparent about it. And it's not off of insurance. It's so that you can buy affordable prescriptions at a modest profit so that we can pay our people.
Yeah.
Right? That's like, that's a good way to use your money. Right? Don't get me wrong. But he's still a billionaire.
Yeah.
Right? And my belief is that we shouldn't rely on the ultra wealthy to crowdfund, right? Like, I think it's super cool that like what's her name, Mackenzie Scott, Jeff Bezos's ex-wife, is donating like all her money to these foundations and charities and all that. Like there's like a charity, I remember reading a story where they were like, yeah, we're funded for the next 10 years because of her. Like, you know, she made a donation to like a school, I think it was, where like an entire, like they basically are now no longer like charging tuition, like ever, right? We shouldn't rely on that.
Yeah.
That money should just go to the government, and the government should do it.
Yeah.
Like those people shouldn't have the money in the first place, right? I've always said, I think, and I know we've talked about this every episode now, the limit of what money is, like what amount of money is, at what point does it become pointless, you know? But it's like, I've always been of this thing of like, you reach $999,999,999. Get a special plaque that says like, congratulations, man, you won capitalism. Taking your money away now. Like, and so the issue is I don't believe these people are very different, right? They're just politically adept. They have the ability to read the room. And in this case, the Democrats, like for Mark Zuckerberg, have never like shown a whole lot of opposition to him. Of course, with like the Russia thing in 2016, they were like, you know, whatever, but they didn't ascribe blame directly. It was more like, oh yeah, it was Meta's fault, but we also haven't regulated the industry. kind of was like but Donald Trump has explicitly from day one always said, I want to drain the swamp. I hate big tech.
Mm-hmm.
So they have the ability to read the room and say, look, the polls are showing this is going to be a close election. If Donald Trump wins and I go against him, we might be screwed. So it's all for money, right?
I don't really know if that's what the billionaires thought, because any sort of action he would take against billionaires, he would also be taking against himself and a lot of his homies, which are also billionaires.
Well, that's what Donald Trump attacks industries. He doesn't attack billionaires. So if you look at what they're proposing now with the tax cuts, they actually want to raise taxes on sports teams owners. Do you know who owns a sports team?
Billionaire.
Mark Cuban.
Yeah.
Billionaire. Who did Mark Cuban support in 2024? Kamala Harris. Right. So I think they just have, I'm sure there is a billionaire out there who is genuinely liberal. They're like, yeah, I support liberal ideals, I support a higher tax rate, whatever. I don't want to sound like a diehard Taylor Swift fan, even though I am. But for example, she gave her entire crew $150,000 bonuses for the tour that she just got off of. Right? I don't think she needs the $1 billion, personally. I don't think anyone needs $1 billion. I think she's well off without that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think from her actions, because if you look at the way she does stuff, when she donates and stuff, she doesn't put out publicity statements. She does not make statements about what she donates to. It's actually the foundations will be like, oh, we got a $2 million donation from Taylor Swift. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't go out and publish that. So there's, I guess, room to argue that maybe she is a good faith person who is wants to give back. But again, she shouldn't have to do that. The government should simply tax her and use that money to fund not charities, fund government programs to make people's lives better, right?
Yeah.
And so I do think there are billionaires out there who are, I guess, good faith actors, right? Mark Cuban, I think he's he's probably a good faith actor, but again, he's still a billionaire, right? He's still a billionaire. A billionaire is a billionaire is a billionaire. That's what it is in my mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's just, I think with Citizens United, it opened up this door of who has the most money and who can throw the most money at a campaign. The Harris campaign raised $300 million in one day. And they were celebrating that, right? But where did that $300 million come from? Right? I know that a lot of small donations came in.
I was about to say, I thought I remember seeing the majority of it was small donors.
Right, which is great. That's how it should be.
Yeah.
But also, why are we getting to the point where Joe Biden's campaign was the first campaign to breach $1 billion in history?
Mm-hmm.
Why are we spending $1 billion on campaigns, right? I want to say it's Italy. I could be wrong. I know it's a European country. They basically set up a public fund, essentially, for people who are running.
Mm-hmm.
Any candidate who makes it past the primaries gets an equal share of that, and that's their budget.
Yeah.
And it's
I fuck with that.
Yeah, I fuck heavy with that. And that's I think what the dissent in the Supreme Court for Citizens United was arguing is not necessarily that exact policy, but saying sometimes you got to just suck it up, and not everyone and everything needs to have unlimited free speech. Sometimes speech can be limited because it benefits everyone rather than taking it away. It's taking it away from an entity and giving free speech back to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. There's a movie I watched called Mississippi Burning, and the short of it is Willem Dafoe plays an FBI agent. He goes down to Mississippi because it's right in the middle of the civil rights era.
Mm-hmm.
And these civil rights advocates who are trying to get black people registered to vote go missing, quote unquote. You see them at the beginning of the movie get murdered, but they're missing to the FBI. So he goes down there to solve it. It's in Mississippi. Kind of guess what's going on. His partner is from the South, so he's kind of this he is racist, but racist in a unaware way. Like, like, like he would say a slur, but like be like, it's inappropriate to hate black people. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, Joe Biden's like, you ain't black if you're not voting for Biden.
Yeah.
Like, everyone understood what he was trying to say. Like, he's saying like Donald Trump is not in the best interest of black people. Like, I am the candidate with the best interest of the black community, right?
Yeah.
Whether or not that's true, that's not for me to decide because I'm white. But like, that's what he was trying to say. That's kind of what the partner was like, is he would say like offhanded shit like that. Partner's talking to these people in the town about how it's wrong to be racist, and they're kind of giving him pushback. And he says something about like his dad was racist, and he said, my dad was so busy filling his heart with hate. Something like my dad was so busy filling his heart with hatred that he didn't realize it was him being poor, that was killing him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, what we rejected in Citizens United, right? Is it not necessarily the hate part, but like we rejected the idea of like, it really is the people who elect politicians, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's unfair if one person is able to curb stomp and just steamroll millions of other people's voices. So, yeah, Citizens United, and that's why we're here now.
That is why we are here on this couch making a podcast, is because Clarence Thomas said he wanted another private jet.
It's not even, he just rides on private jets.
He wanted to get ridden in a private jet.
Ridden? Yeah. I want to get ridden in a private jet.
By Clarence Thomas?
No. 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 Not any politician. I'm going to actually retract that statement.
I was about to say, there was that one guy who got kicked out of Congress for vaping and buying Steam games with his campaign money.
Surely you're not talking about George Santos.
No, I'm not talking about George Santos. It was before his time.
Oh, okay.
But there's some other guy.
There's some hot politicians out there.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris is hot. She's 60 and she's hot. I think she would have been our hottest president. No, JFK.
I was about to say, I don't think she's ugly, but I don't think she's hot either. I think she's like middle.
Well, you could say someone's attractive without,
Yeah, I know.
Right.
And I still think she is middle of the road.
Okay. Kamala Harris is hot. AOC is hot.
Yeah.
John Ossoff, senator from Georgia, is hot.
Don't know that one.
Who else is hot?
Pelosi got a rack.
Shh, dude, it's like we see him, girl. We see him. Like, you know who? Jackie O was not hot.
Who?
JFK's wife.
Oh.
This is this thing people say, like, she looks like she eats metal.
What?
So disrespectful. But, you're in public service. That's what you open yourself up to. Gavin Newsom's hot.
He is. I mean, he's that one.
Genuinely attractive. Mitt Romney's hot.
I feel like he's
an evil man, but he's hot.
Yeah.
There's just, I don't know. That's the currency that politicians need. How hot? We need to elect more hot politicians.
That would get more people entertained, or not entertained.
Well, I'll say this.
Aware of the elections.
You look at the politicians. Look, Mitt Romney. He's a pretty moderate Republican. Most people agree that he would have not been a great president, but not been a dictator.
Mm-hmm.
Hot. People like AOC's policies. She's also hot. I think that's the solution. Elect more hot people.
Yeah. All right. What politician would you take out for a nice romantic date and then resize? Leave it in the comments.
Queen Elizabeth.
Queen Elizabeth. Currently or back in 1920s?
The corpse, yeah. The corpse, yeah. The corpse has been sitting under fucking Westminster Abbey. Is that what the church is called?
I thought that was their, like, castle.
I don't respect British politics enough to know that. For all of our British listeners out there,
fuck you.
I respect you. I love your audience. Your political system is a little bit more bonkers than us, and that's saying something.
I do like how they can just fight.
It's silly.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's silly.
Great.
It's
I
silly.
love it.
I do respect the hustle of Liz Truss's cabbage. Did you see that?
I think so.
She was like a super unpopular person that got appointed to be PM, and they like put a cabbage live stream up. It said who will last longer.
Oh yeah.
I respect the silliness of it, but I just can't take it seriously. I can't. We won the Revolutionary War, so unfortunately, rah. Don't come for America.
You want to read off our socials again?
Oh, yes. Also, I'm going to post, for those of you who are following along, if you want my sources, I'm going to post all the sources that I have. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8 of them. They're all verified sources that I used to use in school, so I know that they're good. A couple of them are Wikipedias, though, just because. Okay, socials. Can't find my socials. Wait, here they are. Do you know what a morning skinny is?
Yeah, it's when you like wake up and you haven't really eaten yet, so you don't have any really like sodium in you, so you're not getting bloated.
Yeah, I opened my phone because I went to the gym this morning and I did core and I took a picture of myself. I was in my morning skinny era. I'm still in my morning skinny era, and this Celsius is making me shake because I haven't eaten anything today. Okay, YouTube, Learning Curve Pod. Bluesky, learningcurvepod.bsky.social. Twitter is Learning Curve Pod. Instagram is learningcurve.podcast. Fuck those people who got Learning Curve Pod. As always, standing on business. Let's see. You go to our link tree. All of this shit's going to be in there, which is in our bios on all these. Our TikTok is Curve Podcast. And I keep wanting to add this to my little scroll to our latest episode. Bodhi's Twitch is Shrink3Dink.
That's me. Yeah, thanks for listening. Whatever platform you're currently on, go to a different one, hit follow, subscribe, whatever the button says.
Contact your local congressman and tell them you want campaign money.
Yeah, ask them out on a date.
Restricted. Yeah. Take them out on a date, woo them with money, and then tell them they are not allowed to have money.
Yeah, and then kiss them goodnight.
Tuck them in.
Tuck them in a bed. Give them a little tickle, maybe. Tickle your local congressperson. All right.
Oh, God. We have to sign off.
All right.
We're past time.
Until next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.